We're live. That was so
Thank you.
funny.
Okay, we got it. It's working. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you. Mike was like, say. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Really excited that you guys are here joining us. Can you see us now? Okay. Hi, Delilah and Maya. Hello. So yeah, warming up before the webinar. Awesome. Before the PDS webinar today. Amazing. So we are starting season 2 of our podcast. We're going to start live streaming our podcast, and we're going to be talking today all about the dismissive, avoidant, and fearful avoidant core wounds. And we're going to be sort of leapfrogging from the discussion on Wednesday where we found our core wounds and did the exercise and talked about the different attachment styles. But today we're going to really talk about a discussion of how these things are playing out. Like, how do these things play out in everyday experiences? And for anybody who's new here, what you'll know is that Mike and I both used to be, I guess, avoidance. Fearful avoidant is sort of anxious and avoidant. But, I used to be a fearful avoidant attachment style, and Mike used to be dismissive avoidant. So we really, as people who have both done the work and become secure, we get to sort of share the inside scoop. So we'll talk about, what it actually feels like to have that wound, how those things play out, and then what it's like to be on the other side of it. So really excited that Mike's back. I've always loved doing these podcasts, so we're excited to kick off. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Zencat and Sean. Nice to see you. So season 2, here we come. Exactly. So let's start by talking about the core wounds of dismissive avoidance, and I'll pull from questions here sometimes, Mike, and we'll, if you guys have questions throughout it, I'll try to talk about some of the answers to the questions, things like that. I'm excited you're here too, Evelyn. Welcome. So let's kick off talking a little bit about the dismissive avoidant core wounds. And I guess we'll set like an intention for everybody listening today is you're welcome to ask questions throughout. We'll usually, I'll pull some questions when you guys have them. But my hope is that you can see how these things actually affect your life in a practical sense. If this is you as either the fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant, or if you're anxious or secure even, and you're just trying to understand people in your life, we're going to really give you the inside scoop, like really play it out, talk about what it feels like to have the wound, where these things come about, and then we're going to dive from there. So let's kick it off, Mike, if you want to start.
Yeah, for sure. So, as Tice mentioned, the whole purpose of this, we really want to give you like an inside look at like what's going on in the mind of a DA. I'm going to speak on behalf of the DAs and my experiences in the past. I've done a lot of healing work to become secure, but I can definitely share some insight with everyone on, what is my partner thinking in this situation? Why does my partner do that? Et cetera, et cetera. So having said that, do not kill the messenger. We're all trying here, and I know DAs, you might be in a challenging relationship with the DA now. You might have had an ex-DA where you didn't have the best experience with. My hope is that, in sharing this, you're going to understand a lot more about them, and a lot of things will be not taken so personal. Because it's very easy to take these things personally if somebody has done something and you feel, hey, what did I do wrong? Why did this person do this to me? And it's not letting anybody off the hook. It's just the more awareness we know, the more we either have the choice to work on things and better sort of perception, or a better choice of, maybe this type of person wouldn't fit well with me and what I'm looking for. So that's the hope and goal. But we love all the attachment styles, and we just want everyone to heal. So, and Tice, I don't see the chat for some reason, but if anybody says anything, just you can be
I'll pull some questions. Honestly, everybody's just being so sweet. I was checking out the chat. I just see a lot of people in here saying that they're actually in an FADA dynamic. They're working really hard at it. They're repairing. A lot of thanks for sharing. So I appreciate all the really kind messages, you guys, and excited that you're here for Saturday morning chat.
Yeah. It's hard for you to believe that people are here. I just see me and you on the screen. So, but anyways, most of my past relationships have been a DA FA dynamic, so I have good insight into that. So hopefully that'll help some people out there, and we can relate. Okay, so just starting with some of the most common DA core wounds, and definitely the ones that I've struggled with myself. We'll start with I'm trapped or I'm stuck. Do you want to first sort of talk about?
I'll dive into like what I've seen. I'll talk about what I've seen with clients over the past, with people in our personal development school programs. And I sort of generally see the trapped core wound. The trapped is the fear of engulfment, right? And obviously when a dismissive avoidant grows up and they're in a situation where they are needing attunement. Like how, for anybody who's not as familiar, how dismissive avoidance become the way that they are is that in childhood, children are wired for attunement. They're wired for connection. And when you can't get that and you feel like that emotional part of you is rejected, when you don't have that, that attunement or that presence from your parents or caregivers, and if in fact your emotions are rejected, deflected, dismissed, then what you end up feeling is this sense of like, okay, this part of me is like not okay. So you have to park that part of you and reject that sort of emotional, vulnerable part of you. But then you end up feeling trapped. Then you're like, okay, well, and I'm in this environment where I want something from my parents. I want this connection, or I want to be accepted in this way. And it just doesn't feel like it's there. And so there's this really strong feeling of like, okay, well, I basically am stuck in a situation where I can't get my needs met. And that stuck feeling then causes a dismissive avoidant to be like, okay, let me create space. Let me actually just push away in this particular situation. And when I minimize my attachment needs, I feel freer. And as a result of that, then the dismissive avoidant ends up feeling, okay, I need to constantly create space. I need to constantly create distance. And when people get too close, it instead then causes them to feel trapped or stuck. And so I'd love to hear, the practical side of like when you were dismissive avoidant, what you actually felt when you would feel the trapped wound come up. Like what were some typical contexts you would see so people can understand?
Yeah. When I see the trap wound and the way that I sort of viewed it, felt it, was definitely afraid to commit and get too close, because I felt like the closer you got, the more there might be an emotional and big like reaction when you want to get out. So if that makes sense, so I wouldn't want to trap myself. I wouldn't want to get in too deep almost, because the more you involve their family members, the more you involve their friends into the relationship, and the more you sort of bridged two people together, the more I would feel like, oh my God, like getting out, if I want to leave, I'm stuck. I'm going to be really like stuck here and I can't get myself out. So the best way to not feel trapped is just to create as much sort of autonomy and freedom and independence, while still, we want connection. We're all wired for connection, and DAs are no exception to that. But we want connection where it's like, okay, there's not a ton of expectation. There's not this fear of being like controlled and like maybe pushed down a path that we don't necessarily want to go down, or pushed to move into dynamics faster than we'd want to. So
Yeah.
I just think a lot of it was me avoiding trying to be trapped. So
I also noticed, and I'm curious if that shows up for you, I always notice with clients that a lot of dismissive avoidance kind of had this background belief that once they were in a relationship, it was super hard to go. Like once I've committed, it's very hard to leave. And I think it's because dismissive avoidants kind of grieve differently, number one. Like I think they have this sort of rebound effect, but I'm curious if you felt like that when you were dismissive avoidant too.
if it was hard to leave,
Yeah.
if I wanted to, yeah, for sure. The main fear for me was like conflict. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want like high emotional arguments, or somebody getting upset or yelling or shaming you, making you feel worse than you already feel about yourself. Because I already felt like I was a huge fail in relationships and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. So then, that would be amplified then when you're trying to break up with someone, if they're just telling you like you're the worst, you're terrible, you're bad. There was always this sort of thought that a breakup equals just this long, drawn out weeks, maybe even months of just like
Pain,
emotional, pain, and
drama.
just emotional drama, that kind of stuff. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just really think like you're just trying to avoid that at all costs. So
Yeah.
again, to just have like your toe in, or not that much in, then if there is a breakup, you can kind of just rip it off like a band-aid. And that's why this is not appropriate whatsoever, but that's why you'll see DAs sometimes break up with you in a text message, like
Yeah.
somebody that you've been with for a year. I've heard about multiple years people have been with, and their partner broke up with them, not even sitting them down and having a conversation about it. And of course that's so hurtful. But again, it's in the avoidance of wanting to not have to confront confrontation, like conflict, and just high emotional drama. Like the DA is just so like the flight reaction is the
Yeah.
first thing I think of when that comes up. You just want to bolt. So
Yeah. And I think that brings us to our second wound, which is the feeling of being really emotionally unsafe. And I think what's so interesting is like dismissive avoidants have this I am unsafe core wound. And I think they feel extremely unsafe in conflict. It's not physically unsafe per se, but it's like emotionally unsafe. Like the sense of, whoa, like I don't want to have to deal with that. I feel like I don't know what to do in those situations. So I want to explore that for a second, but I'm just going to, Maya, you can post your questions in here. I'm going to just pull a question. That I'll pick questions that are sort of related to the wounds that I see, and the chat's kind of moving around a little bit, but I see when families get involved, I feel like there's this pressure of reliance or expectations. Can that relate to feeling trapped? And I'll let you start with that question, but I have a strong answer for that for sure.
So, sorry, when you said the family's involved, does that
Yeah,
create
when
more
family's
pressure?
involved, it feels like there's this pressure of reliance or expectation. So can that
Oh,
basically
yeah.
make the trapped wound even bigger?
Oh, yeah, of course. Like already you're trying to like not show the person you're dating how messed up and at your core like defective you are. Now you're adding multiple people that you're trying to kind of fool in essence to show that no, I'm good enough for your daughter or son or whatever. So it just adds a layer of like almost more people that you're eventually going to let down, that they're going to see who you really are, and you're going to screw up as you always do because you don't know how to do relationships, or you feel you don't. We feel kind of disempowered that we don't know what the hell we're doing in relationships.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely if you add on family and other dynamics, that's a huge weight and a huge pressure. So I used to avoid meeting family members for as long as possible, and would avoid bringing them to my family functions and stuff like that. Yeah.
Which is so common, and, like, you'll see that all the time. And so you'll see a lot even people are saying, "Oh my gosh, I totally relate to the family one. It seems like the pressure from family then spills into the relationship and need for space." Absolutely, these are great shares, and so what you'll see is that they end up in situations where, it's like, okay, there's more pressure if it feels like there's a family dynamic because it feels like you're getting one step closer to the fears that this person's trying to avoid, right? So there's so
Yeah.
many great, questions. And
Yeah.
even Maya said, can you talk a little bit about people pleasing DAs? I'll just touch on this really quickly, how they differ from APs. So one of the biggest things you'll see is people pleasing. Just one of the differences between APs and DAs, and then we'll get back to the next wounds, is that when an anxious attachment style feels anxiety, they will generally try to get closer to somebody. Okay. When a dismissive avoidant feels anxiety, they will generally try to create distance from somebody. They'll minimize their attachment needs. So we do have these people pleasing dismissive avoidants who will feel like, okay, I have to do something here. But there's always this rebound effect where they end up feeling like, okay, I did something, but then they feel more enmeshed. And dismissive avoidants who are people pleasing and enmeshed, they end up trying to create like the most space from people often. They get burned out the fastest. So they may be kind of people pleasing when they're in the presence of people, but that's causing them to constantly be like, okay, I can't wait to get out of here. I need to retreat. I need to pull back. And then they need to literally get further and more distant from people. And you'll actually see that dismissive avoidants who are more people pleasing tend to spend even more time alone because they're taking on a lot of their general, a little bit enmeshed, and they're taking on their partner's feelings or people around them's feelings or expectations. But the entire time they're doing things, they're internally like, okay, I need to minimize my attachment needs more. I need to get out of here. I need to create distance. Whereas APs are usually using this to try to constantly get closer. And yeah, it's enmeshed, exactly. And they get most exhausted. We have a video on YouTube if you ever want to check it out. And it's the 4 types of dismissive avoidance. There tend to be, we have like the dismissive avoidant as an attachment style, but there's different archetypes. So you'll see the social DA, who's like the social butterfly and all around and spends a lot of time with people, but they never really let people get too deep with them. They're always like at a high level sociable with people. Or the enmeshed, who's very people pleasing, but then retreats a lot. So you'll see different archetypes, and we'll maybe cover a whole live stream on that at some point. AP is preoccupied. Good
Can
question.
you be a mix of social DA and people pleasing DA? Like
Yeah,
those
I literally
yeah.
was thinking when I was like, should I say that out loud? I was like, Mike was probably like a bit of a mix of those two.
Oh,
Yeah, it was just so
If
interesting.
I went anywhere, like I traveled a lot and I would go to different hostels and stuff like that, I would be the one who I would know everyone. By the end of like the few days I was there, I would know every person. But it would always be these small, short little person interactions. So I wouldn't get too deep with anyone. But I would love connecting people and meeting everyone. So it was like meeting needs for connection. But I was not showing like who I really was.
Yeah, like keep it high level, keep the distance.
Yeah.
I remember. So Mike and I shared an office space at one point, and we're working together on some stuff years and years ago, like however many years ago now, like 12 years ago or something. And I remember like you had made friends with like everybody on the floor, like he was like very like typical of you. But it's so funny because people would never think you're DA at the time because you were like so friendly, but but then I knew, you're my dear friend. So I knew you very well. And like that you just still needed a lot of your distance and time. And like, it's so interesting.
Or no one would believe I'm an introvert. And Tice claims she's an introvert. Guys, put in the chat. Do you think Tice is an introvert?
I am through
I
and
know
through.
this for so long, but I still don't buy it. No.
Graham, when Graham talks about you, like Graham's like, he always is like, oh yeah, but Mike's extroverted. Like he'll like say something, he's like, Mike's so extroverted. And I'm like, yeah, Mike thinks I'm extroverted. And he's like, no.
So we don't see the other side of it. We see our interactions with each other, but then when we're done our interaction, we're probably like we get to just relax and like recover and stuff like that.
So we're talking about how so I'm an INFJ, you're an INFP, I think, and my husband knows Mike really well, and he always thinks Mike's extroverted, and Mike always thinks I'm extroverted, but it's like we all recharge through our like quiet time and all of that. Yeah, I'm more ambivert. I'm more on the cusp. I am actually like introverted. I think I'm like 60-40 on the MBTI test. So
I just want to touch one more thing on the family dynamics. I think it's important. I think a lot of people have partners who either haven't introduced their family to them or vice versa. For myself, a lot of people that I would date, one of the requirements was someone who's not judgmental, because I was so judging myself for so many things that I'd feel comfortable around somebody who seems to have that kind of non-judgmental quality about them, like accepting of everyone. When really it was probably a lot of FAs who had like wounded bird syndrome, who, accepted everybody and wanted to help and make someone better. But my point being is the family dynamic was even harder because sometimes my partner might be unjudgmental and it was comfortable to spend time with them. Their mom or like their dad was like a highly judgmental person. So it would be so tough to like go to family functions and sort of be under that microscope or under fire from those people. And I'd have partners get mad at me because they're they want your family to see, they want their family to see how awesome they think you are, but then you go there, you don't think you're awesome, and then you're just having to put on this like inauthentic version of yourself. And so I just want to add, like, for anyone that haven't been invited to a family function or their partner doesn't want to go to their family function, just know like they still should, and at some point, like you can't avoid your uncomfortableness forever. You'll never grow, but just know there's like a deep insecurity and deep fear of being like judged and exposed, and that defectiveness wound is so deep that it's just really hard to override it consciously. So
yeah, and I love that you said that, and I was just thinking like it's the defective core wound, right? So you guys will see, and this is another really big core wound for dismissive avoidance, is like this idea that I'm defective, fundamentally flawed, everything that Mike is saying. But what's interesting is dismissive avoidance, when they feel like that, or they feel like that's threatened, or like somebody could make them feel like that by judging them, by being critical, everything in them, like all of their coping mechanisms, all of their conditioning for years has basically shown them like retreat. Like when you feel bad or you feel uncomfortable in the situation, just pull back into yourself. And I've definitely had so many conversations, probably thousands of conversations with clients or people who come into PDS and share about things. And they'll talk about how, oh, my DA partner, for example, went to a family event and they didn't even really try. They retreated into themselves, and, they didn't like really try to make a big effort. And I think it's because it feels so confronting. And then it's like, you're up against all of your coping mechanisms. And so, huge thing that can show up. So let's cover really quick. We'll kind of summarize. Maybe I'll summarize quick and then you can share some practical experiences, but just the wounds we touched on there. So we talked about trapped, other big core wounds. Huge is defective. So this idea that like that I'm fundamentally flawed. I don't want people to see or know that big fear that comes up. And so that defective core wound, and it comes with a lot of shame. And what's really interesting is shame is the emotion that makes people want to hide. Like I was sharing this the other day, I remember being in 9th grade and it was like my first or second week of high school. And I like walked into the lunchroom and I like slipped and fell. Like all my food went everywhere. And I just remember this feeling of like, oh my God, I want to just run out of here. And you know that feeling when you feel embarrassed, you just want to like escape. Shame is like a deeper, form of embarrassment, really. And so, and
Yeah.
when you feel like that, you just want to like run, right, and hide. And so that's why you see dismissive avoidance create so much distance. And then the I am unsafe core wound often comes up in context where they feel emotionally unsafe. So they feel like, oh, I don't want to have conflict. I don't like to have drama. I don't know how to do drama in this way. And so that's often what shows up there. And I don't know if you want to just give like a context for each of them, just a share a little bit about if you've ever felt like that and what the manifestations are. And to Mike's point, just one other thing I'll say too, is you keep saying like, hey, it doesn't mean don't, like the dismissive avoidance should still have to let somebody come, if you're dating somebody for a year and you really care about them, like they should meet your family. Like the dismissal would overcome these things. It's up to people to do the work, but our goal here is to create context. It's not to say like, oh, so all the behaviors are justified, but it's to create context so people have understanding that it's not always coming from where we think. It's not like, oh, you're not cared about or you're not loved or the person's not interested. It's a lot of times it's their own inner struggles that are getting projected onto the relationship specifically. So share a personal example of that, either of those wounds.
No, just like, family. I remember one partner, she was always trying to get me to meet their family. And I had in my head an idea. She talked about them a little bit. So I formed my own judgments about them. I think one was like a professor, a university professor. And I think the mom was just a house mom, like a stay-at-home mom. But I in my mind, I pictured all university professor. He's probably expecting me to be like super intelligent, have all these like really, really interesting stories to tell and share my intellect and wit and all this kind of stuff. So I created in my head this sort of version of him that I'd never even met yet. And, and nobody expects you to really be this, blow their head off and like be this amazing person. Like they just kind of want to meet you and get a sense of who you are, feel your energy. A lot of stuff is a felt sense too. But I was always so worried I had to like perform well. And she really helped out by describing her father more and just saying like, no, he's such a nice guy. And like, he's really, he does volunteer work and, he's just, you have to kind of find out what the big fear is. Like, what are you so worried? What's the worst thing that can happen? And just kind of find out what the person is really fearing. Like, oh, that your dad won't like me. And then like what reason would he have for not liking you? Like, are you gonna do something crazy at the dinner? Like, are you planning on, acting nuts or whatever? Like, if you just go just by being there is a huge sort of, statement and shows that you're invested and care about their son or daughter. And just be yourself. And the thing is, like, if you're not, I think we think we have to be exactly like them for them to accept us. Probably maybe you'd speak better to this, but like, I guess before we were in tribes, and if you weren't accepted by the tribe and weren't sort of like one of them, you would be kicked out, and then your survival's pretty much you're a goner. So I just find like you don't have to show up as a certain way for anyone. Like you just by you being yourself, people appreciate that. And then I think people can really smell inauthenticity.
Yeah.
And when you're like acting nervous and like worried, like seems like you're hiding stuff, that comes off as inauthentic. And I think that is like 10 times worse.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that helps, but it was always just like these family dinners would give me panic attacks leading up to them. Yeah. But when I found I was just be authentic and that's all there is to it. And that just helped a lot.
And what's so interesting to me, and I hope everybody listening notices this, is that every attachment style has their version of core wounds, and the core wounds make us project out these stories into the future. So like you see it so obviously with an anxious attachment style who's like, oh my gosh, I haven't been texted back. Are they going to leave? Do they still love me? And paint these sort of, nightmares in their mind, right? Of what could happen and everything that's going wrong and all the fears that are coming up. And so you see that so strongly for anxious attachment styles, you see it so clearly for fearful avoidance who might have the betrayal wound, who are fearing that and projecting that into the future. And then what we don't realize is like dismissive avoidance do the exact same thing. They just have different wounds that they do it around. So they do it around like defective, like, oh my gosh, they're going to see I'm not like them. And they're going to think all these things poorly of me. And I'm going to feel, all these expectations. Or, oh my gosh, I'm going to be trapped, or I'm going to feel really emotionally unsafe in a situation. And so in the drama, you could hear Mike talking before about the dramatic fear of the dramatic breakup and, the conflict. And like all of these are just what we do as human beings, because when we have core wounds, it's really like this idea. And I always use this analogy, but it's like a bear going into the woods. Like if you go into the woods and you see a bear and the bear chases you and you run away and you're safe, thank goodness. But then you go into the woods the next day, you imagine that the bear is everywhere. Like every time you hear anything move in the woods, you're like the bear. And so we all have our versions before we do the work on core wounds. We all have our versions of these wounds that have happened to us in our past experiences, often from childhood. We can acquire them from past painful relationships as well. And we store them because the mind is wired to hang on to negative things more than positive things as a way to literally store these things and protect yourself from them. But what ends up happening is you end up just projecting these wounds and these fears and these ideas onto everything. And that causes so much distress, right? It causes somebody to be like, oh my goodness, I'm going to be abandoned. And you're always bracing for impact, or oh my gosh, this person's going to judge me and think I'm defective, and bracing for impact. And it really affects our behaviors as a result as well. So really great share. I want to just
two quick things I just want to bring up from what you just shared. One thing helped me so much, and you could probably correct me if the numbers are a bit off that I'm about to say, but like 10% of life is exactly what's happening. Like right now, there's no disputing that you're wearing a black shirt. There's some books behind you. I'm wearing a blue shirt. I have a necklace on. These are like non-objective facts. And that 90% is up for subjective interpretation. So it's like we get to choose how we interpret different situations. So like that's amazing. That I remember learning that, and that's almost like so much freedom that like, okay, I could either, if I'm sitting with someone and start to tell myself, oh, am I being too boring? They probably think I'm boring. Oh, am I being too this? They probably think I'm that. That's my interpretation right now. That's not the reality. Unless I ask them exactly what they're thinking and they're sharing it, how could I know what they're thinking? So why not start to practice better thoughts? Like, hey, this is going pretty well. Or, they haven't shown me any evidence to think that I'm boring or uninteresting or whatever. So why not go with that line of thinking? And so just that sheer 90%, we have that ability to make reality or interpret reality in a positive sense. That's amazing.
And neuroscience has proven that everything that we do, like when we think thoughts, our emotions follow, and neurochemicals are impacted. So if you're thinking very stressful thoughts like, oh my gosh, this person doesn't like me, or they're going to reject me, then literally you feel stress. And then you have norepinephrine, you have cortisol, you have all these different things that show up as a result. And then all of a sudden that's going to influence your behavior, because neuroscience has proven that every decision we make is based on our emotional state. So if you have stressful thoughts, then you have stressful emotions. That's actually affecting your physiology. It can put you into sympathetic nervous system mode and affect your nervous system. And then all of a sudden you're in a position where you're now acting nervous. And now you're in a position where that's going to deter from the outcome you want to have. So absolutely. And so much of our life is subjective, and you guys will really see this. And I'll pull from a question here. Hi, Christian. Good to see you. I'll pull from a share here. Like if you can imagine that somebody who's anxiously attached, if somebody's not calling them back, obviously their subjective interpretation is going to be based on their own core wounds. So their interpretation is going to be more things like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be abandoned, or I'm being, disliked or excluded or unloved or not good enough. And they project their core wounds here. And dismissive avoidant, if somebody doesn't call them back for a couple hours, they're like unaffected. They're like, yes, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And so you can see how subjective things are. The what we make situations mean because of our core wounds affect the output that we have. And so it's so important to recognize that. So I want to just pull a couple questions here. really briefly just from the chat. And then we'll go on, we'll kind of speed through the other core wounds. We'll try to get into some FA core wounds as well. I just want to let you guys know too, we have a 14-day free trial to the Personal Development School right now, which is basically the personal development school for relationships. And you can actually dive into the Emotional Mastery and Belief Reprogramming course and rewire your core wounds. It's like a course you can get through for sure before 14 days. You can literally check it out fully free, download the workbooks, the materials. But if you are seeing these core wounds in your life, or you want to understand them in other people's life, we have them for each attachment style. And we go through and we talk about the neuroplasticity part and the actual rewiring part. So you can dive in there for sure. Now, I just want to, I want to ask this question for you, Mike, from Delilah. So Delilah says, how did he overcome his fear of being trapped? What exercises did he do to internally overcome that? And I'll actually just tell you the exercises I recommend first, and then you jump in and share yours. Yeah. So we do this rewiring exercise. I'm going to say it at a really high level, but basically your conscious mind speaks language. Your subconscious mind does not. It speaks in emotions and images. So your subconscious mind, it does not, like, you know, when we do affirmations, in my opinion, are kind of BS. No offense to anybody who loves affirmations. I'm sorry. Nobody likes when I say that, but affirmations are you're speaking language, and your core wounds do not exist at the conscious level of mind. Nobody wakes up every day and says, oh, I'm going to tell myself I'm not good enough all day and see how I feel. Your core wounds are stored subconsciously. Your subconscious mind stores everything. And then what happens is we have these experiences as adults where things remind us of a core wound. And how a trigger comes up or a core wound comes up is where we insert the meaning from our previously stored interpretation. So if I gave that bear in the woods example, if you had this idea that, okay, I'm defective, you were made to feel like that as a child, or you're made to feel trapped as a kid, then as an adult, as soon as somebody tries to give an opinion or share something, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm trapped. That comes out from your subconscious mind, okay? Nobody's like, oh, I would like to choose to feel trapped in this situation, right? Nobody's consciously choosing. And your conscious is your logical thinking, analytical mind. So your conscious mind speaks language. Your subconscious mind's language is emotions and images. Okay. So if I say, whatever you do, do not think of a pink elephant, you probably see an image of a pink elephant. That's because your conscious mind hears do not. Your subconscious speaks in emotions and imagery. So what ends up happening is we want to be able to speak to our subconscious mind. And the way we do this at a very high level is we need 3 major ingredients. We need the opposite of the core wound, and we need repetition, emotion, and imagery. So what we would do is we would say, okay, how am I free? And we look for evidence in our lives of where we actually have freedom. And we need actual concrete evidence, because evidence or memory are images. So if you're like, oh, I have freedom because I can set boundaries, and you think of a time you recently set boundaries, you see the images in your mind of when you were setting that boundary or having the conversation, and you feel the emotion connected to that. So what we do is we come up with 10 to 15, and I'm saying this very fast. This is one of many exercises with workbooks and everything really in detail in PDS. So I'm glazing over this because we have a lot to cover. But you basically come up with the opposite of your core wound, number 1. So not good enough, trapped, free, etc. Number 2, we come up with 10 memories or pieces of evidence of when we actually felt free. Because when you recount old memories, if you're like, oh, you know, I felt really free last week when I was running around playing a sport with my friends and I had the freedom to move my body, you see the images of maybe you were playing tennis and running around, and you see the images of the tennis court and the racket, and you think of yourself running, and you feel the emotion attached to it. So now we're using our conscious mind to speak to our subconscious mind. And when we can do that, and we come up with 10 pieces of evidence, we record it down for 20, we record it down, and we record ourselves actually saying these things out loud. And we listen back for 21 days, because neuroscience tells us we need at least 21 days to build in strong enough neural pathways, and neural networks get fired and wired through repetition, emotion, and imagery. So if we can bring these 3 ingredients together and listen back for 21 days, ideally in a suggestible state, so when our brain is producing more alpha brainwaves, all of a sudden we are actually firing and wiring new neural networks, new neural pathways that eventually become new neural networks, and neural pathways atrophy over time. So when we stop retelling that story, those die out. And then on top of that, when we can make sure that we are doing things to create the opposite of the core wound. So if you're feeling trapped, how can I actually create more freedom? Set better boundaries, speak up more, do things that give that to me in my life, then we're nurturing it from a behavioral perspective, and we're rewiring it from a cognitive perspective at a subconscious level. And those things together actually are a huge part of how we overcome the wounds. So I know that was really fast and that was just at a high level to share, but then if you want to give a practical experience of that.
Yeah. Well, the reason why we feel trapped is because we feel there's no other way. Like we feel that there's going to be a huge problem or something really bad's going to happen if we try to get untrapped. So basically the fix to this is like learn to communicate and basically learn to meet issues head on. Don't avoid issues, don't sweep things under the carpet, don't not talk about what's going on inside of you. Because yeah, the reason why you're disempowered, you feel trapped because you don't feel like you have a voice. You're trying to hide what's really going on for you. When really, I had someone that helped me so much in this regard, and I have to give her full credit for it, where she told me, listen, my feelings are my responsibility. So you're not responsible for my feelings. Like, because I know you're worried if you say something, I might have a bad reaction to it, or I might, feel bad about myself or whatever it may be, whatever your thoughts are, just know my feelings are my responsibility. Your responsibility is to tell me what's going on inside for you. If there's a doubt, if there's a worry, if there's a thought of you wanting to leave the relationship, if there's something you're not good with, don't just sweep it under the rug. Or what I used to do was think, oh, there's somebody better out there for me, somebody more perfect, where we never fight, everything's just calm and fun and blissful all the time, which is absolutely not true. So really, by her sort of instilling that safety that you can tell me anything, I don't care how crazy it is, I don't care if you think it's shameful or it's something that's like, oh, you shouldn't be wanting that or desiring that or etc. She really gave that vibe and set that space that tell me whatever is going on for you. Then I'm not gonna I might not love what you're saying at the moment. I might not agree totally with what you're saying, but I'm not gonna shame you or get angry. But at least then I have the information to at least decide what I want to do with that information, or at least we now know what's on the table, and let's see if we can come to a middle ground or a solution. So basically, like you're never trapped if you have a voice, and there's always nobody, unless somebody's physically has you in a cage. Obviously, like you're never trapped, and really we're trapping ourselves because we're feeling like we don't have the ability to use our voice and share what's going on. We find it's too shameful or too worried about the reaction. But really, if you get better at that, it's not something you can just do right away. But if you slowly start sharing things that you think would be shameful or whatever, try it out with your partner. See how they react. Obviously, if they have a terrible reaction to it, you're probably not going to want to share after that. But you could preview it to your partner.
That's about their reaction at that point. That doesn't mean that that's the wrong behavior. And I
Right.
love, and sorry for interrupting you. I
No.
love what you said, because what I want people to see in what you just said too is that our adult life gives us opportunities to heal the childhood stuff. And like as a child, you can't communicate your needs, or you don't know how. And it's beyond, the wisdom you have the capacity for as a kid. Like we're not supposed to know or have all the answers. But as an adult, you actually get to undo feeling like you're stuck in the situation where you can't get your needs met and you just feel trapped by learning to use your voice and speak up and doing that consistently. And that's whether or not people respond in a beautiful way or a difficult way, that's you actually undoing the conditioning from childhood by taking up space and showing up. And what's so interesting is our wounds are often also our shadow, in a sense. Like the things that we are most wounded by, we also keep ourselves stuck in. Like you can see it, like when you feel trapped, you end up trapping yourself and assuming nobody will listen and not speaking up, for example. Or when you feel not good enough, you assume you're not good enough and you hold back from taking chances and opportunities to improve yourself. And so, all these things become these sort of self-fulfilling cycles. So yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, no, it's game changer, and it makes you feel more proud of yourself and just better about yourself that you're not withholding things from someone that you really care about, because it's more hurtful to withhold it and then one day just drop it on their lap like, oh yeah, this isn't working, and I'm gonna leave.
Yeah.
Instead of in real time sharing, hey, like I notice I'm having thoughts around this, or I notice I'm having thoughts around that. And listen, we're all human. Like nobody shows up, and I know we've seen a lot in Disney movies and other movies that show the other thing, but we're all human. We all have flaws. We all have some thoughts that we wish we didn't have sometimes. But the simple matter is nobody's perfect, and I don't think your partner expects you to be perfect. If anything, it's your imperfections that, again, being authentic is what shows up the most. So just realize everybody has their stuff, and most of us are just not feeling safe to show it, or like at least the avoidance. But really, there's nothing better than like showing parts of yourself that you're deeming as like shameful or unworthy, and then your partner accepting
Accepting
them.
them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true intimacy. That's what's gonna bring you guys like a lot closer together,
And
because everything
so
else is the surface kind of.
yeah, and so often dismissive ones think that things that they're doing are so shameful, like playing a video game or like, oh, they ate some chocolate or oh, and they like shame themselves so big about things that are just like human things. And it's sad because they don't give themselves that opportunity a lot of time to build that intimacy or closeness with somebody by letting themselves be seen so that they can even receive acceptance. And so it's
Yeah,
like further keeps them in that trapped cycle and you'll see it come up so strongly.
and I know we're not on FA yet, but I think FAs are the master of setting such a good space to allow someone to really open up and feel safe to open up. But then FAs don't give themselves the same sort of grace where they can go really deep. They don't want to appear like weak or a burden, or there's a lot of different things. Anyway, I'm fast forwarding, but we'll touch on that.
I'm like, I don't know if we're going to get to all the FA wounds today. I might say them at the end at a high level, but I want to stay on DA and move through DA in
Sure.
detail.
Wow.
And then we can always do a part 2 for an FA. So can we take a peek here? So we talked about defective, we talked about unsafe, we talked about trapped. Let's talk about some of the other ones. So maybe we'll go into weak is a big one. Hi, Yasmin. Maybe we'll do weak. Also, this idea that dismissive avoidants feel helpless, I think is a big one, and you really see it manifest. Maybe we'll start here. You see a lot of dismissive avoidants feeling the sense of like, I am helpless.
Mhm.
And they won't realize that, but usually when they feel helpless, they go into this like, why bother space. Like, oh,
Yeah,
I just can't do it anyways. I'm not capable of doing a relationship differently. I'm not capable of changing the situation. And dismissive avoidants are like the kings and queens of pre-disqualifying themselves from things.
yeah,
Um, where in advance
yeah,
you're like, I can't do anything about this. Let me just not try. And
yeah.
it creates relief, but I don't know if you want to share like a practical experience of when you've felt that in the past. And maybe too, I think people really liked, I'm seeing a lot of the shares in the chat. People really liked when you shared how you overcame it. So, times that you felt this kind of like, why bother, or compulsion to retreat, this
Yeah.
natural sort of response to your own internal conditioning to do that. And what did you learn to do differently?
Yeah, okay. I'll start off by saying I don't have the chat function working for me right now, so the chat's probably like Mike's being avoidant to us, not giving us any attention, but I literally can't see any of the comments. So we'll have to fix that for next time. But appreciate everybody listening. So anyway, just to start off, yeah, to double down on what you said, I used to say, and I hear a lot of DAs saying this, like, I'm not meant for relationships. Like, I'm meant to be alone. Like, they think like they're literally incapable and just do not have the hard wiring or know-how to like be in a normal relationship. And then when I was thinking about this before we got on today, do you remember that song from the 90s? It's called Do You Think You're Better Off Alone? I don't know if that's the name of the song, but that was
You're
like
better off alone.
I
Yes.
used to hear that song and I'm like, that's my song. I'm like, I feel better alone. And that song used to like kind of validate like, no, some people are just, I think they're better off alone and they're gonna live
Yeah, that's such a
better life than
DA
that.
like story for sure.
Yeah, for sure. We should do songs and analyze their attachment stuff at some
That would
point.
be a great
You know,
topic.
there's so many like FA songs and AP songs. Anyway, so yeah, I just felt like never knew what the heck I was doing. I felt like I was a fail, and I felt like my partner was always getting mad at me. So couple that with sensitivity to criticism and protecting my defective wound, I would always get frustrated and say like to my partner, like, if I'm so terrible, like why are you with me? Like you just seem to point out all these bad things about me. So why on earth do you stay with me? I'd be really upset and frustrated. But really, like, they were probably just asking for their needs to be met, like nothing like crazy. But and maybe some of them weren't doing it in the most eloquent way, like even realizing that I might have been DA and been a little more sensitive to criticism. So as you know, if you're going to a DA with a need to be met or giving feedback or whatever, there's sort of a way to do it to bypass those core wounds. But yeah, I just wasn't, modeled, I guess, a secure relationship. So I felt like I didn't know what that even was. And I just felt like, what the heck do I do here? So I guess the fix for that is understanding, first of all, what's a secure relationship. And that's the beauty of the work we do in attachment theory, is like we get to see what are the pillars of a secure relationship. It's almost like you missed those semesters in school about how to have a secure relationship. So, you grew up and you went through the school of life, but you didn't get to do those semesters where they taught you about how to securely relate with someone else. So really it's just learning and trial and error, and just trying things that you are a little out of your comfort zone, but okay, I know this is good for growth. I know this is a key element for a relationship to thrive. So even though it's so uncomfortable, I need to at least start inch by inch introducing these types of things. So my main thing is just to find good modeling of it, whether you in real life, maybe you know a couple who's amazing and rock solid and secure, or just immerse yourself in this world and you get to see what a secure relationship is actually based on.
Yeah, and what you're talking about too, what Mike's talking about, which is so good, is exposure work, right? Like for dismissive avoidance and in PDS, when we go through like the different attachment programs, one of the biggest things in like our group coaching for the DA attachment style is we talk a lot about how like exposure work is a great tool. And so we really dive into doing like titrating things, like doing things in small doses. And so what you're saying is like removing helplessness, and so much of removing learned helplessness is actually doing small steps that are moving you in the direction of where you want to be instead, or what's a healthier output. So as you do it really slowly, dismissive avoidance generally respond really well to exposure work. So what you do is you get them to say like, okay, maybe I'm going to practice communicating or speaking up or setting a boundary if somebody's being critical and saying, I don't receive things that way very well. And as you start slowly but surely stepping outside of your comfort zone, just a little bit, you start to build momentum. And that's actually a huge way to overcome learned helplessness, right? And dismissive avoidants are very, very burdened, in my opinion, by learned helplessness. They really get into this place of like, can't do it. And then their own programming works against them, where they're able to go, okay, well, I guess I can't do it. I'm just going to surrender and not try. And that is an avoidant thing to do, to just not bother or not try. And a lot of dismissive avoidants have, DA is dismissive avoidant. A lot of dismissive avoidants have this like, why bother story and narrative. And it's so much. And we have Scott saying exposure was key for me. Yeah, you'll see that big time. It's one of the best. As long as you're doing exposure and you have a daily practice, it can actually help to rewire the subconscious mind as well over time. And then I'll read some things here. So people put their songs. I Don't Believe in Love was someone else's song. I was just listening to that song before coming here. That's so funny. The club hits. So you'll see a lot of this. And yes, Delilah. So also it makes sense that our subconscious is built of evidence with actions and imagery. Exactly. So your subconscious stores everything, and it stores every memory over time. It consolidates memories. And we encode memories more strongly the more emotion they have. You guys probably all have noticed when you have a really strong emotion around something, you remember that experience quite vividly, right? Whereas you don't have a lot of emotion around something, you can kind of forget the details of like, oh, what you ate for breakfast, because who cares? It's on top of mind. But if something really emotional happened at breakfast, you're going to remember that, right? So it's part of why you'll see we have to actually, in order to rewire, get a lot of that emotion and imagery in there when we talk about that from earlier. So let's go through the last major core wounds for dismissive avoidance. Let's talk a little bit about the weak core wounds and not good enough. Maybe we'll do those ones. And then what we'll have to do is a part 2 for fearful avoidant. I think we were a little optimistic. We were like, oh, we're going to do fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant. I think lesson learned that we like to chat, and there's so many great comments in here. So we'll do them one at a time for the future. We'll do next week's, we'll do fearful avoidant. But yeah, if you want to speak about some personal experiences there, I guess I can summarize them quick first.
You want to start with the weak? I am weak. I'm vulnerable. Yeah.
So the weak core wound is really this idea that you are weak if you're vulnerable. So when I would have so many conversations with, you can take an attachment style quiz at our website. If you go to personaldevelopmentschool.com, you can take a quiz and you get an in-depth report. You'll learn everything just for a couple people asking, how do they know which one they are? And so what you'll do is when a child grows up in a household and they feel like when they're vulnerable, it's shamed. And a lot of times shamed in a way that's like basically told you're weak, oh, like don't be a crybaby. Oh, come on, get it together. Like a lot of that kind of messaging, if it's consistent enough over time, that messaging causes a child to judge that part of themselves as weak. Right. And if you're getting that messaging, so much of how we obtain our own conditioning, we get our own programs in 3 ways: what we see repeatedly, what we hear repeatedly, and what our firsthand experiences are. So if you're constantly being told, oh, you're weak, oh, don't be a baby, oh, get it together. If you're constantly getting that kind of feedback, then that's going to be what shows up. Right. And so then what happens is a dismissive avoidant thinks, okay, this emotional part of me is defective, is weak, and also defective. That comes up too. But then they end up thinking like, okay, well then I can't show this. Strength means never having emotions. And unfortunately, it's funny, I was in a webinar yesterday. We do like our PDS webinars every day inside PDS, and there we go for a lot longer and answer a lot of questions and stuff. And one of the shares that somebody said, which I was like, oh, that's so sad because that's really hard. But somebody said that their dismissive avoidant that they were dating said something like, oh gosh, like your emotions, stop being so emotional. It's just so weak. And they felt so hurt by that, and rightfully so, because that's not a nice thing to experience when you're trying to make a bid for connection or express something. But what the underlying messaging was is that that's how that person judged their own emotions. And so when you believe that about your own self, that's your programming. So of course you project it onto others. We tend to treat other people the way that we treat ourselves. And so you see that dynamic. And so as a result of that, dismissive avoidants like really try to not be emotional, and they really judge themselves when they are. Like they'll feel a lot of embarrassment around it and things like that. And it's like, no, it's courageous to be vulnerable and to open up and to share and to talk through things and address things head on. Like that takes courage. But dismissive avoidants have conflated the ability to open up and share and the strength of that with all emotions and all emotional expression. And they sort of have this weighted, like this blanket idea that like anything emotional at all is weak. And so it's a really important thing to do some rewiring around. And all these core wounds come from integrated attachment theory. These aren't part of like traditional attachment styles. This is like integrated attachment theory core wounds. But I just want to say too, you can rewire them. You can change them. If you see them, if you're stuck with them, you are going to be able to change them. So I'll pass it over to you with that.
Yeah, I know you hit it on the head, especially with, the messaging when I was young. Crying was weak. I remember my grandfather would always kind of mock us when we were crying and call us like crybaby, like, oh, crybaby. And so, yeah, just I always thought, and then like a lot of movies and whatnot show like the macho tough guy is, the alpha male. You're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to show weakness and emotion. But the thing is, like, I was so sensitive, but I felt I had to try extra to hide this sensitive part of myself, because again, it was my belief before that women want like this tough alpha man who never cries, is just always the rock and not going to show when they're scared or fearful or insecure about something. So yeah, I was just like, I remember one time I was dating this girl, and I remember starting to try to change my association with crying and sharing vulnerably. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give this a shot. And then it didn't go well. Like I could see on her face, she was kind of like not really into it. And which made sense. Like I remember her talking about her dad. He was this kind of like emotionally repressed big Russian guy. And, I think that was her sort of comfort zone, to not have a man who is expressing themselves, right? So, not saying she was a bad person, but I just think that was uncomfortable for her, and she didn't really know how to receive it. Yeah, exactly. So, I think after that, it took me a while to want to do that again. And I didn't realize that, that's more of a her thing, not a me thing, because most secure women I know, would love if their partner would open up, like especially partners of DAs, like they're probably like shaking their partner to be like, let me in, tell me Tell me some of your feelings. So yeah, I was just reprogramming the idea of crying and showing weakness is completely the opposite. And I realized like some of the most strongest men that I've seen and been around now. And that's the beauty of doing healing work too. You start sort of your circle starts to change. You start to be around more secure people and people who are, authentic and showing who they really are. So in the last few years, I've been exposed to men who are not afraid to emote and cry and do that kind of stuff, and they're doing so well in so many areas of life. So I've had to just sort of like reprogram that association to like crying and vulnerability and weakness, and again exposure response. It's sharing things slowly but surely, not just like
Yeah.
working up all at once.
And I think that's one really important thing is like, I think two things that come up for me when you say that is like, I think when dismissive avoidants hear that, they think like, oh, being vulnerable means crying every day or something. They almost like think it's like this extreme. Like it's healthy to cry when you feel upset. It's healthy. We're born as children. We come into the world. We eat. We sleep. We cry. We go to the bathroom. Like we have these fundamental human functions.
Mhm.
And I think the more we repress these like fundamental, not you wouldn't like shame yourself for like being hungry or like needing to go to the bathroom, right? Like it's like these natural sort of human things. And so there's this really important part of that. But then I think dismissive avoidants I've often found when I like had conversations with dismissive avoidants, especially men over the years who are like clients or in our programs, usually I'll see them go, oh yeah, like I'm not going to cry every day all of a sudden. And it's like, no, 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 being expressive and like saying, hey, that affects me when you do that. Hey, I don't like when this happens, or hey, that kind of like hurt my feelings. Can we not do that again? Or hey, I don't like how you're talking to me right now. It doesn't land well with me. Like just talking and expressing doesn't have to be this like hyper intense thing. It can be something where it's like, no, no, you just like open up in this titrated way. You just share like, hey, you're just able to express, you're just able to, and that's really where that exposure work piece comes in, is it doesn't have to be this, really intense, overwhelming experience where you go from so repressed to this huge, suddenly you're bearing your soul to everybody. And I also
Yeah.
think that it's good to, I always say to people when people are like, how emotional should I be when I'm dating somebody, or how much should I let somebody in, or how much personal stuff should I share? I'm always like, we have a baseline of trust, but trust is also earned. And not everybody, like that's kind of a tough experience, like with the girl who probably just didn't have her own capabilities to handle situations and maybe had her own stuff going on too. And it's like, we want to titrate opening up so that you also see that the person's like earning that as well. And because if you say something personal to somebody and right away you share something that's like a 4 out of 10 personal and they have a bad response, you're probably not going to then want to share more emotional or vulnerable things. But if instead you're able to share like a 3 or 4 out of 10 and there's a good response, you're like, okay, cool. I can kind of trust this person to be a good sounding board or somebody I can really talk to or share my inner world with. And then maybe you share something slightly more vulnerable. And then the person's like, oh, they show up really well for that too. And you're going, okay, this is working. This is good. And so as we continue to do that and titrate that, you can kind of see where somebody's going to stand. And then you're also taking your exposure work to the right people in the right places. You're letting them earn that vulnerability. And I think that that's a healthy thing and generally something that secure people kind of naturally do too.
Yeah. And don't give up after the first attempt. Like you said, some people they have their own problem maybe with showing emotion and being weak and vulnerable. So if you share something like that with them, they might just be very like uncomfortable with it, and that's not a comfort zone for them, right? So it makes sense that they wouldn't really know how to handle it. But then you'll see other people are amazing at it, and that's probably your therapists and your coaches and stuff like that, or just some people have that natural gift where you just feel so at ease with them, and you feel like you can tell them like anything. So yeah, don't ever give up after the first try on something. It's easy to say like, oh, see, like this is what happens when I share my feelings or vulnerabilities. But you gotta, just like you're trying a new skill, you're trying to learn how to ride a horse. Like you're probably gonna get bucked off a few times or have a few bad situations, but that's part of the process. Like it's not going to be a smooth linear process.
Definitely.
So yeah.
Okay, so let's do the last one.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard somebody saying already going in a rabbit hole about this. Yeah, it was a hard beat at the beginning of my work to connect to my own feelings. I felt like I was trying to act. Yeah, and sometimes it can be so repressed, but that's where exposure work is so meaningful, to do it like slowly and surely. It makes a huge impact. There's lots of cool, sorry, I keep, we stub our toes or we cry. Yeah, as little kids, right? Um, um, yeah, there's lots of good shares and just comments coming through here. I've read that change becomes inevitable when the cost of change is less than the cost of remaining the same. That is true. We can also actually help our mind to get there. We have a rewiring tool in PDS that helps you get there faster. That helps you actually like see the cost of not changing earlier, and really feed that to your own subconscious mind so that we're more motivated and inspired to change about things that our conscious mind can evaluate. Anyways, that's a topic for another time. So let's do the last big wound that we didn't cover is not good enough. And that goes hand in hand with a lot of the other things. You know, the defectiveness, all these types of wounds that can come up, but there's just this sort of general feeling where dismissive avoidants can put themselves down a lot, be judgmental, think that their actions are not good enough. Like, you know, the difference between not good enough and defective. Defective is like, I am at my core shameful and flawed and like broken, and I don't want anybody to really be let in and see me. Not good enough is like, I keep messing it up. I keep making a mistake. Oh, I can't really seem to get it. I can't. It's more about our behaviors and our core, our character. But still a really important one that goes hand in hand. And if you want to just share a personal experience about that one.
Yeah, I always felt like I was never good enough, especially for women or relationships. I always felt like I fell short in so many different ways. Maybe wasn't making enough money. I wasn't motivated enough. Like I wasn't working like 50 hours a week and like grinding. I really judged myself if I felt I wasn't like extroverted and like socially comfortable as other people. I was always thinking, no, a partner wouldn't want to be with someone like that. Like they'd want to be with a partner who can go to them to parties and social functions and, you know, hold their own and be entertaining and comfortable. So yeah, it was so much of a focus on what I didn't have versus
What
the
your
focus
strengths
on
were.
what my strengths were. And literally like just that shift alone. And I know that's the basis of a lot of the reprogramming tools that we use, but it's really like, of course you're gonna feel bad if you're focusing on every little flaw or imperfection you have, right? And then you're gonna feel a lot better when you recognize and like stop to look like, holy cow, like I'm not only really good in this area, like I'm amazing. Or like, you know, there's just so many different ways that we're almost dismissing the ways we are good enough. And I guess that's probably the function of the RAS, right? Or just a filter. We're seeing life through a filter of our beliefs.
Yes.
So, you know, in a day you could be showing up as good enough. Let's say in a month you could be showing up as good enough on 100 different examples. But that one time you felt like you weren't good enough, that's what's gonna light up in your brain and be like, see, you're not good enough. Like every time you try, you screw up, or you know, see, somebody's showing you that you're not good enough, but you've completely ignored and negated those 100 ways that you were good enough. So it's just about slowly getting that Libra scale. If it's I'm not good enough, if it's totally down this way, we got to start to slowly keep it in balance, and then if you keep going, making it. Of course, I'm good enough. I've always been good enough. I'm good enough just for being here.
And so much of the reprogramming gets, so what Micah just said was such an important point is we have a mechanism in our brain called the reticular activating system, or RAS, and its job is to filter information. And so it will filter things according to things we focus on, but also what we believe. So it's like, if you have a not good enough belief or wound, you always focus on when you're not good enough instead of actually seeing all the times that you are showing up. And I love what you said too, is like in your own authenticity, like as a human being, like, hey, maybe like you're going to sit over here and be like, oh, I'm not as good at race car driving because I don't race car drive, but maybe I'm really good at being vulnerable and showing up and like sharing my humanness and connecting with people and like things that you're so good at. And like, we often can get stuck in these situations where you're so focusing on like the race car driving that's not even meaningful to your life, or whatever that thing is, where you feel like you made a mistake, that you filter out all of these things you are doing. And by actually working through that, it can be really get a lot of momentum and a lot of healing and just peace back in your life again.
Yeah. I remember hearing too that it says every single person outside of you is seeing you like completely differently. So they're seeing you from a view of their beliefs, projections, experiences, all this kind of stuff. So it's almost like you can't win unless you just be authentic. So if you're authentic, the people who are gonna really enjoy you and think you're quote unquote good enough, that's really going to be obvious. And then the people that don't, that's who you don't give your attention, and build your life around those kind of people.
Yeah.
So really, yeah, when I heard that before, that everyone sees you totally different, I'm just like, well, what? How much of a pain in the butt you're gonna have to manipulate yourself for every single different person to try to find out what their likes and dislikes are, how you can manipulate them to liking you. It's just a
Terrible
headache.
recipe for life.
You know, not
Not
fun.
the way we wanna go, exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, we're a little over time, and I know you have a call coming up, and I have to get moving too we have some PDS webinars this afternoon. Thank you all for being here. If you wanna join PDS and come check it out for 14 days, we do have a free trial going on. I'll put the link is in the description down below. You can come in, you can join us for our afternoon webinars that go on much longer, and we answer a lot more questions in there, and do a lot of group exercises together. For rewiring. Hi from Ireland, SF, welcome. Lots of great just comments and shares in here as well. Yeah, resources for people who fear marriage and commitment, rewiring the I am trapped core wounds, learning to communicate your needs, learning to actually be vulnerable. And those are like huge things. And those are in our PDS dismissive avoidant rewiring programs. So you can check those out in there as well. But thank you, everybody. Thanks, Mike, as well, for sharing your vulnerability. I'm always look at guys, dismissive avoidant. Mike used to be a dismissive avoidant. He comes in here and like bears his soul, which is, I really appreciate it. Like you can just see you've really overcome the fear of vulnerability because you really show up. And I think it really helps a lot of people. So thanks for sharing like the insights and inside of your life. And next week, we'll talk about the fearful avoidant wounds. I'll share some, experiences of what that felt like for me, things I've seen with clients over the years, or students in our programs too. And that's it for today. Thanks, everybody.
I'll put Tice on the hot seat next week. I won't let her off easy.
I'll share. I'll be ready.
Yeah. Good.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mike. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.